I never had the pleasure of meeting Bud Henry. But Bud Henry's award is awarded to people who are parents, like the Angel House, or Chuck Ramsay, who I'm introducing today. And Bud Henry must have been a hell of a guy. Thanks, Bud. That date there on the poster, 1966, and that was really what a lot of people might think was a golden era for North Tonawanda football. Tonawanda was a very, very impressive team in that time. And Chuck Ramsay, who later coached me at Bishop Gibbons and then at North Tonawanda, was actually part of that program and had a 10-year run of undefeated teams at the junior varsity level. A lot of famous players came out of that. That created a lot of inspiration for all of us who grew up here in North Tonawanda, who knew that competition is what makes this fun. It's not fun when it's easy, it's fun when it's hard. So with that, I also want to thank Mike Tuzo, because he said he's a storyteller. And I'm going to tell a few today. I hope to make you laugh. I hope to say some serious things. And I want you to have a chance to reconnect with your emotions about what you've done and how you've experienced North Tonawanda football. So I can remember being, maybe 9, 10, 11 years old, and I lived 2 blocks from the old North Tonawanda Junior High School Stadium. And when those lights went on a Friday night, a pack of us would converge on that field, and we didn't pay admission. We congregated, I believe it's Tabor Street and Niagara Parkway, that corner, and the national anthem has taken quite a bit of controversy over the last month. And our strategy was, when the national anthem started, the policemen inside the fence would stand at attention and salute. And one of our people would pull the fence up and, like the Great Escape, just charge under that fence onto the field. And I know there are people in this room who did that. Right? Now, sometimes we got so excited we forgot the last guy. All right, and so he sometimes didn't get much of the game. He used to hold the fence on the other side. But now to get serious, we thought we were putting something over on those policemen. But those policemen were gentlemen who served this country in World War II in Korea. And they fought to allow children like us, young boys, to have the freedom to run out onto that field and be inspired by the game we were about to see. And I thank them. And anybody in this room who served, I thank you too. Well, your next stop was you got to the fence, and then there were the old guys smoking cigars. These guys were about 40. And every time since then, and I'm really serious when I say this, that I've smelled cigar smoke, it took me back to a fall night in North Tonawanda. And you can't replace those sort of sensory images. Now the third thing was, now it's just after halftime. We made it all the way around to the other field, but went through those clouds of cigar smoke, and we saw that team, those MT Lumberjacks, coming back out of that locker room for the second half. And I remember the click of those cleats on the pavement. And I remember when you're 10 or 11 years old, you weigh about 90 pounds. Massive players, right? And there was always one guy on North Tonawanda who was huge. They always had a huge guy. And North Tonawanda had these very distinctive navy blue pants. And that big guy's pants were always really kind of a light blue, and I never wondered why. But the funnier thing is, when you're 10 years old and you weigh about 90 pounds, we all would say, why don't they just give the ball to him? Nobody could get him down. And that just tells you about the gap when you're in those formative years, when you're 10 or 11 years old, and you're aspiring to be one of those guys walking out of that locker room and playing on that field. And there's a big gap there. You're just wishing it'll happen. You're hoping it'll happen. As Mike Puzo said, You're going to be the hardest working son of a gun to make that happen. But it's not happened yet. So now let's move past the players and let's move into the stands. And this is where we get back to Bud Henry and we get back to people like the Angel House. What did your parents do to help you? What did you inherit from them? For my dad, I inherited something that says anything is possible. He was a tool maker. He could fabricate anything. He could fix anything. And he inspired me to say, if I wanted to accomplish something, anything was possible. My mother wanted to be the best at everything she did. She gave me the permission that it was all right to try to be the best. Sometimes people don't try because they're going to be embarrassed. They think they're going to offend someone else. And I thank them for that. And I know all of you players have different reasons for thanking your parents. But now the reason I'm here is the most important person to fill that gap between aspiring to play and actually getting out that field and playing and maybe ending up here is your coach. I talked about Chuck Ramsay. And Chuck may not remember this, but I met Chuck twice before I played with him at Bishop Gibbons. The first time was in PAL basketball. Does anybody here know what PAL basketball was?
Yeah.
Police Athletic League, played at the, what was then the high school, and Chuck's dad, who's a Hall of Fame inductee, Pop Ramsay, asked his young son, about 32 years old, to go there and help organize that PAL basketball. And I was reasonably tall, I guess, but I knew nothing about basketball, and still never did, and I really was bad at it. And somehow I was chosen to be a captain to choose up teams. I was clueless about who I should choose. And this handsome guy who said he looked something like Paul Newman, I heard somewhere. Who told me this, Chuck? You. No, Chuck himself told me he looked like Paul Newman. So anyways, I'm taking too much time to pick the next guy, and this guy that I've never met before comes up and says, why don't you choose him? I go, okay, so I chose him. All the season goes on. This guy scored one basket all year. And it was right after halftime, he got the tip and went and shot and put one in the basket we were shooting at in the first half. And that was the first advice I took from Chuck. And luckily I gave him another chance to be my coach. Right? So the second time I met him was at a hole-in-one tournament at Christiana Field. And but a hole-in-one tournament is they just set up some circles over there and you're about 100 yards away and you hit 5 balls and the more points you get, you might win. And Chuck was moderating that, again, doing a favor for his dad. And so I had just graduated from the 8th grade and Chuck had just got the job to have his first varsity coaching job at Bishop Gibbons High School. And I said, well, you know, I got a lot of energy, I'm young, I'm energetic, you know, I want to go and play for this guy. So I was bold enough to walk up to him and say, Mr. Ramsay, you know, I'm going to come to Gibbons and I'm going to be one of your best players. And he said, yeah, sure, kid. Now, the reason I was confident is the rest of the guys at Gibbons were pushing 80 years old. Come on, you got to understand. Bishop Gibbons, right? Gibbons Apartments. I didn't think that would fall as flat as it did, okay? But, no, seriously, Chuck had the good fortune to get a bunch of Catholic boys who just got out of 9-year sentences at the Catholic school where the nuns were beating them up, okay? So we were like hardened Marines when we reported to Chuck, so he was really happy that we had that sort of background, you know, so, but in any event, now I'll get serious about Chuck and your coach. When you have that gap between being a young kid and wanting to excel, and seeing those big guys and just hoping that you can, much like Mike Kuzov said, you want to be noticed. Even if they get you by the wrong name, you want to be noticed. So what you thank your coach for is for setting you up early in your life to have somebody recognize your talent, trust you to do the job, and then work not to let him down. And that's a lesson for the rest of your life. When you're young and you have that sort of success, you remember that hard work can translate to success. And it's not always guaranteed that when you go into the working world that your talents are going to be recognized. There's a lot more variability in the working world. But when you're an athlete and you have a coach that gives you a chance, he instills in you something that will last the rest of your life. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to struggle through that. But I thank Chuck Ramsay for doing that. Now I'm going to close with one thing. When I was a 18-year-old who thought I, by virtue of being 18-year-old, became an adult, I started calling my mother by her first name. I called her Irene, all right? And so we were around the house, and I'd say, Irene, what are we having for dinner? And so it was obviously a little disrespectful, just a punk kid. And so one of my friend's mothers heard that I was doing this and very kindly told me, you shouldn't do that because anybody can call her Irene. Only you and your sister can call her Mom. And I started calling her Mom again. And reason that this is my close is I've been referring to this gentleman over here, our last honoree of the evening, as Chuck Ramsay. But from now on, I'm calling him Coach. And I want not to be selfish about that because he coached a lot more players than me. What I want this community to do is to look at the record that you see in that program and the spirit of the Bud Henry Award he's going to receive tonight. And I think that all of us are honored to have such a man with that background be honored here tonight and be our coach. So with that, I call up Chuck Ramsay to the stage, my friend and my coach.